Am I the a-hole for not taking the fall for my husband? I was home, just got out of the shower in jammies ready for bed. Husband has been drinking. He's really drunk at this point. I try to stop from leaving, but he left anyway. 4 minutes later, he calls me. I answer. He's yelling, "Open the door, open the door." I swiftly ran to open the front door. He says, "I crashed into a house. Come see." I was speechless and said nothing. I grabbed my slippers and a coat to follow him. There wasn't much light on. The next thing that happens was a very strong person grabs both my arms, put them behind my back, cuffed me, then slammed me down on the trunk of the cop car. I was placed on a back seat for over an hour. Cops kept coming back asking me that same questions. Finally, one cop says, "Your husband is saying you were driving and you crashed into the house. I smell liquor on him and not you. I don't think you were even here. He's dressed to go out, and you're dressed about to go to bed." The end result was my husband got a DUI. So am I the a-hole for not taking the fall? He's still furious with me for not saying it was me. He says it would make more financial sense if I took the fall so we wouldn't have to get hit with that 10K price tag of a DUI. It's making me feel like I'm crazy. Please help. Now for the top comments. Your husband sucks. There is no coming back from this. Sorry. Get out now. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Don't bail him out either. Use the time alone to file for divorce. I didn't bail him out. He got released from the drunk tank, I want to say 72 hours later. I will add that once he got to the jail, he called me. He was so angry. He is yelling with full volume and saying this is my fault. You're a dumb MFer, then hangs up. I cried and cried. He actually had me thinking that was my fault, and I screwed us. And I still questioned it, that's why I posted it here. I'm doing this publicly because I must face this marriage for what it really is, not what I'm hoping for. Don't fall for it. He has nobody to blame but himself. He will probably start love bombing you once you file. Stay strong. WTF, he tried to have you arrested and sent to jail. You were not the a-hole, he is a major one, and stupid plus extremely irresponsible to boot. Being drunk is not an excuse for getting you out of bed, having you come to the scene of his crime, and then pinning it on you until the cops figured out he was full of it. I would not speak to him or be around him, and any future discussion would be through my divorce lawyer. I know it's not that simple though. He needs therapy if he doesn't understand how messed up this is, and how cruel it was to someone he is supposed to love and protect. He's lucky he didn't unalive someone, and his first instinct was to have you take the blame for his careless, inexcusable behavior. I would say you are underreacting. Does he often control everything and try to force you into situations that are dangerous and uncomfortable? I'm worried for your safety because this is something he did so callously just because he wasn't prepared to take accountability for his actions. If he didn't want to fine for a DUI, he shouldn't have been drinking and driving. It's simple. I'm sorry you now have to deal with the consequences of his mistakes. Not to mention that I'm sure it was a very traumatizing experience on multiple levels. Good luck, Opie. Stay safe. Well, your husband is a worthless POS, and the fact that you have to ask if you're the a-hole in this situation tells me he hasn't been very good to you over the course of your relationship. This is unforgivable. I would dig deep, Opie, and find some dignity and self-respect. I've been hoping it will get better. I keep telling myself it will get better, that it must be me who's the problem. Why would he be so cruel to me just because? You're right, I've lost a lot of my dignity and self-respect for myself. He says it will get better once I put more effort into cleaning the house, cooking, making more money, and doing more chores, since he works 16-hour days, not hard labor. Even as I type this, I feel so pathetic and lost. I feel defeated and exhausted and heartbroken. Next story. Am I the a-hole for bursting out laughing when she told me what she brought to our relationship? I, 25 male, have been dating my girlfriend Jen, 24 female, for 9 months. 5 months ago, Jen lost her job when her company went under, and around the same time, she had a falling out with her roommate. She was in urgent need of housing, but in an awkward position with employment status. So she reluctantly asked if she could move into my house. I agreed because she had already spent the night several times, and she moved in under the condition that she would begin looking for work to contribute. Now back on our second date. When I asked Jen if she wanted to be exclusive, she responded by asking me what I would bring to a relationship with her. I answered as pragmatically as possible: a stable income, loyalty, companionship, willingness to compromise, and consistent attention to my appearance and hygiene. I didn't really care much for the question at the time, and so while she seemed mildly satisfied with what I said, I didn't ask her in return. I feel like I've held up my end of the bargain. But after moving in, Jen only really looked for work for about 2 weeks. She now spends the majority of her waking hours on Instagram, TikTok, and Netflix. I've raised the issue with her indirectly before by asking how her job search was going, and she said nobody was hiring, which I find hard to believe. Well, yesterday in the evening, I finally hit my limit. Jen drank a bottle of wine that I was saving for a romantic evening date and spent the rest of her day screwing around on her phone. After work, I sat her down and asked what she thought she brought to the relationship. Jen stared at me for a few seconds, as if I had asked the dumbest question in the history of mankind. Then she erupted, frantically pointing at herself. Me, I'm the prize. From my perspective, this was coming from a woman who had just gotten day drunk of wine, watched Netflix, and ate all my food. I honestly couldn't contain myself, and I burst into laughter. Every time I looked back at her, she would give me this incredulous look while shrugging, which only made me laugh harder. Jen got really angry at me and let out this wailing shriek sort of sound. She stormed off to another room, where I'm 100% sure she just screwed around on her phone more. I haven't talked to her since. I feel like I might have gone too far here. Was I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I laughed when I read it because I agree with you. If she can ask you that question and you are able to provide a very good answer, she should be able to do the same. Girlfriend or not, you should give her a deadline to find a job, or she needs to move back in with her parents. She needs to not only bring herself to the relationship, but some finances, groceries, and cooking and cleaning skills. What makes her think she can just freeload off of you? Yeah, this, 100%. Not the a-hole, OP. She's an a-hole and a freeloading one with double standards. You helped her out letting her move in way before most relationships consider it. She isn't financially contributing. She's eating your food, drinking wine you're saving. No shame on occasionally getting day drunk, but save it for a Saturday. She isn't looking for a job because she thinks she's got it made. She's a leech. Give her a deadline, say November, to get a job if you're serious and love her. If not, give her a few days to get her things together and go elsewhere. You deserve better. Also, what a weird question. You bring to the relationship what you have. She has nothing. She's a hobosexual. 4 months into the relationship and asking to move in? No, ma'am. Either work it out with your roommate or figure something out. OP should have said, can't. My landlord won't allow it. Girl probably agreed to exclusivity the first time she visited his place. I've met way too many of those. They visit my place for the first time, ask me how much is rent on a place like this. I'd foolishly tell them I own it. Next thing you know, they're saying, don't you get lonely here by yourself? And turn the second bedroom into a insert room of choice. Don't you want a roommate? It's not safe for a woman living alone. Boy, bye. You're not even spending the night. Not the a-hole. This relationship sounds doomed. Women with the I'm the prize, now pay for everything attitude is the worst. She's getting used to doing nothing all day while you work. Now, losing a job can definitely be extremely stressful and may require time, but not even looking is just being lazy. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that my life would be better without her? My wife Anne and I have been married for 13 years. I am 43 and she is 46. We do not have children. When we first began dating, nobody could make me happy like Anne. She always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say to me when I was down. But over the past decade or so, she has really started to show her true colors. And a lot of what her ex-husband said to me about her has begun to make more sense. For example, I have a very high-stress job. People bring me problems and I fix those problems. But when I get home, 9 times out of 10, Anne just has more problems to throw onto my plate. She doesn't work, so she's free to do anything she wants to solve sad problems during the day. But lately, she has even begun making lists of things that she wants me to do after I work all day. But my biggest issue with Anne is that I can't ever really open up to her about anything. Whenever I talk about something bad that happened to me, she'll either try to one-up me or agree with the person who wronged me. Last Friday, I had a horrible day. There was an enormous problem at work that basically all fell on my shoulders to solve. When I was crossing the street after work, I had a green signal, and a bicycle blew through a red and side-clipped me. The cyclist yelled expletives at me and then rode away. I thought about calling the police because it was technically a hit and run, but there was probably nothing they could do. When I got home, desperate, I talked to Anne about what happened. She listened and then immediately took the cyclist's side. I reiterated that the cyclist ran through a red light, to which she responded that cyclists aren't obligated to stop. When I told her she was wrong and tried to put the issue to rest, she began frantically Googling laws. She found that in our state, they can treat lights like a stop sign. She began triumphantly reading the law to me loudly, word for word, getting louder when I kept trying to tell her that I wasn't interested. At the end of her spiel, she gave me this incredibly arrogant look, as if she was right. I just stared at her for a second and said that my life would be better without her. She got incredibly upset, shrieked at me until her voice was hoarse, and then packed a bag and left to stay with her parents. She has texted me all weekend demanding an apology, but I haven't responded. Did I do something unforgivable here? Wait, if the cyclist is supposed to treat it like a stop sign, then shouldn't it stop and yield to oncoming traffic? You, who has a green light? So she's wrong, and still triumphantly claiming victory? Personally, I think you could have elaborated a little on how she sucks the life out of you, but that's me being petty. I hope the best for you. Came here to say this, like she's not even right. Why is she on a high horse? Sounds like problem solved actually. You said what needed saying, and she left. Done and done. Do you need help on first steps for contacting a lawyer or something? Because otherwise, it sounds like you got her out of your house with minimal effort. Sounds like this was just a tiny straw that finally broke the camel's back. I hope you should stop worrying about this situation with the cyclist and look back at all the times he has felt not only unsupported, but have had problems that she dumped in his lap, that she could have dealt with herself while he was working. Think about the totality of the situation, OP, and then contact a lawyer. Not the a-hole. Her ex-husband was a real one for the pre-warning, even though he knew OP would have been in honeymoon phase. What did her ex say about her? He called her a colossal manipulative witch. I nearly hit him when he said that to me. Honestly, if anyone deserves an apology here, it may be him. Never too late to acknowledge that you're an idiot, Toby. 13 years wasted, now hop to it. You were handed an exit on a silver platter. If you want to double down, reply back to her saying her ex was right about her. Last story. Am I the a-hole for wanting to break up with my husband after he called our autistic son a burden and said he wants to give him up for adoption? I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 32 male, for 5 years. We've had our share of problems like any couple, but this one's really shaken me to my core. We have a son, 5 male, who was diagnosed with autism about 2 years ago. Of course, it hasn't been easy, but I love him with all my heart. He's sweet, and despite the challenges, I could never imagine life without him. Lately, my husband has been acting different. He's more distant, like he's checked out emotionally. I chalked it up to stress from work, or maybe just that we're both overwhelmed trying to balance everything. But then, I overheard something that I can't unhear. He was talking to a couple of his friends, and they were discussing kids, parenting, etc. One of his friends made some offhand comment about how hard parenting is, and that's when my husband just let loose. He started saying how our son is too much to handle, and that it feels like he's a burden. He even mentioned that sometimes he wishes we could give him up for adoption. Like what? I couldn't believe it. At first I thought maybe he was just frustrated and saying things out of anger or stress, but he kept going. He wasn't just venting. He said he missed the freedom we had before becoming parents, and that he thinks it would be better for everyone if we weren't stuck with his life. I was absolutely crushed. How could he talk about our son like that? I would never give up on him, not for anything. He's not a burden. He's a beautiful boy who just needs more understanding and patience. Hearing my husband say those things about him just shattered me inside. When I confronted him, he brushed it off, saying I was overreacting and that he didn't really mean it, that he was just blowing off steam with his friends. But how can I not take that seriously? He's literally talking about abandoning our son. He didn't apologize. He said he's just overwhelmed and feels like our son's autism is taking over our lives, and he doesn't know how much more he can take. But instead of working through it together, he's talking about running away from the problem. Now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't stay with someone who sees our child as burden. But I also feel so torn because we're married, and I thought we'd always have each other's backs, especially when it comes to raising our child. But if he's really feeling this way, how can I trust him to be there for our son and me in the long run? I don't want to break up our family, but I also can't stay with someone who could even think about giving up our child. I love my son more than anything, and I will never allow that. So am I the a-hole for wanting to leave my husband after this? Should I be trying harder to work this out, or is it too far gone? Caregiver burnout is a real thing. Take advantage of babysitters and respite care. Remember, you are more than just a pair of parents, and act that way. With the emotional pressure cooker cooled down, he likely will re-engage with your son. 100% respite care. I'm actually doing a marketing campaign on this right now. I'm fairly shocked at how many people don't know about it. It can be extremely hard to get. If you can't afford it out of pocket, it is very difficult to qualify for aid programs, especially if autism is the only diagnosis. And even then, you need to find someone trustworthy that can be up to the task of caring for your special needs child, not just any old babysitter. Respite is amazing and necessary, but very hard for most caregivers to access reliably. I have one disabled child with serious medical needs, and another that is autistic. True respite is hard to come by. Fact: children are a burden regardless of abilities. Some will require much more attention and sacrifice than others. Children are already a handful, so it's normal your husband is feeling overwhelmed because, by your own admission, your son does need more understanding and patience. Your husband is allowed his feelings, and we can't always control the way we feel about things. Just because he feels a certain way doesn't mean he doesn't love you or your son. Going to therapy is exactly that. Speaking out your mind free of judgment, venting, and finding a way to deal with your emotions in a healthy way. You both need couples therapy and a reliable childcare provider to help manage the extra responsibilities that come with your son. Instead of judging your husband because he feels a certain way and doesn't mirror your own feelings or way of thinking, try to understand where he's coming from and help each other navigate the situation. No a-holes here. You both just need help.